look to Candace Owens to continue the case for the opposition.
Thank you. Let me begin by thanking the Oxford Union for hosting this most important debate in a time of steep political divide during which we increasingly see conversation shut down in favor of protecting feelings and creating safe spaces. I would like to thank and commend you all for having the courage to host this discussion. Dare I say, the Oxford Union is making debate great again. When a close friend of mine learned that I was coming to this deeply revered university, he urged me to be prepared. He said, "Be sure to have your facts, numbers, and data points." Alas, I had to inform my friend that no such preparation was plausible, because the motion that sits before us today is the impeachment of President Donald J. Trump, a topic that made entry into the sphere of debate absent any substantive fact, born entirely of innuendo, and unmitigated anger and personal contempt. Personal contempt, like calling somebody a weak president, an odious president, a hideous president, suggesting that somebody smells like scotch, while very entertaining, is without any fact or merit. Of course, this debate, this impeachment talk, did not begin here at Oxford. Rather, peculiarly, the conversation regarding the impeachment of Donald J. Trump began the very first morning after he defeated Hillary Clinton in a stunning upset back in 2016. And so we are forced to ask ourselves here today, how is it possible that calls for his impeachment began before he even officially assumed office? First, and I recall this one quite affectionately, came the rabid charges of Russian collusion, the conspiracy theory that the Trump campaign had colluded with Vladimir Putin to influence the election results. Sadly, after 2 years of unfettered media propaganda, Democrats' hero and special counsel lead prosecutor Robert Mueller ended the probe, concluding that there was absolutely no proof, zero, that any member of the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. Embarrassed, defeated, the Democrats quickly jumped to their next claim, obstruction of justice, the rather illogical charge that the incumbent president went to great lengths to obstruct the special counsel from discovering his innocence. The claim defied common sense, which is why, unsurprisingly, in March of 2019, the evidence of obstruction was officially deemed insufficient, and the corresponding charges were formally dropped. Running parallel to all of this foolishness was the extraordinary charge of campaign finance violation, a time when an unlikely Democrat hero emerged, porn star Stormy Daniels. Impeachment, the media obsessively claimed, was a plausibility because hush money was received by Ms. Daniels from the Trump campaign. The Democrats became certain that this was the story that would sink the presidency. So certain, in fact, that they transformed Ms. Daniels' lawyer, Michael Avenatti, into an overnight celebrity. Propped up as the long-awaited kryptonite to the MAGA superhero, there were public calls for Mr. Avenatti to run against Trump in 2020. More sadness, because that story collapsed too. And if you need an update, Ms. Daniels was ordered by a judge to pay Trump nearly $300,000 in legal fees. And the hush money lawsuit against the president was dismissed entirely by a judge back in March. Oh, and what of Mr. Michael Avenatti, the man once glorified by Democrats as a presidential contender? It grieves me to report that he has now been accused of financial fraud himself, indicted for extortion, fraud, and identity theft by a host of clients, including Ms. Stormy Daniels herself. Which brings us to Ukraine. Because only in the fervent madness and desperation of radicalized leftism could a man be accused of colluding with both Russia and Ukraine. Despite Ukrainian President Zelensky outright denying that any quid pro quo existed between his government and Trump, And despite the disastrous hearing yesterday before the House, which revealed that none of the alleged whistleblowers had any firsthand knowledge of the call between the two leaders, Democrats will continue to push this narrative to its natural conclusion until it collapses, like all of the other false narratives, under the weight of its own deception. Ladies and gentlemen, need I remind you that a president can only be impeached for committing a high crime or a misdemeanor, a crime like former Democrat President Bill Clinton committed when he lied under oath about sexual relations that he had with an 18-year-old intern in the White House. Unfortunately for Democrats, beating Hillary Clinton is not a high crime. In fact, many people, like myself, consider that to be an act of philanthropy. By now, you may have gathered that the argument I am making is one of overzealous partisanship behavior by the Democrats, but that is really just the veneer. Do not be deceived by the topical arguments today. Do not overlook the true meaning of this conflict. Recognize that what we are debating today is not left versus right, Republican versus Democrat, or liberal versus conservative. It is tyranny versus liberty. If a decision is made to impeach a president on the basis of opinion, then the republic is doomed. If personal animosity and prejudice become the basis for removing duly elected officials going forward from their offices, then the republic is doomed. Founding father Alexander Hamilton spelled out this potential abuse of impeachment when he forewarned that such prosecution, and I quote, in many cases will connect itself with pre-existing factions and will enlist all of their animosities, partialities, influence, and interests on one side or the other. And in such cases, there will always be the greatest danger that the decision will be regulated more by the comparative strength of parties than by the real demonstrations of innocence or guilt, end quote. Even in times of extraordinary political divide like today, we must remain principled. We must remain factual. And I am afraid that the basis of impeaching Trump is neither. Appropriately, Alexander Hamilton also wrote that a nation which can prefer disgrace to danger is prepared for a master and deserves one. Through the continued onslaught of these various fraudulent investigations, we not only disgrace ourselves, but we weaken our position upon the world stage. We signify to the rest of the world that Western civilization is on the brink of implosion. Within America, constitutional government is dissipating before our eyes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have traveled 3,662 miles over the Atlantic Ocean to inform you all that you simply cannot impeach somebody that you don't like. And if the chamber would like to continue to be held in high regard, emotion will be set aside in favor of this immutable fact. Thank you for having me.